All right, friends, welcome again. I don't know if you guys have seen the video circulating. Bwala gave an interview with a media called Car Report or Car Media, and at least I watched that interview, and then I found it interesting to respond to to all the things he says in that interview. So I'm going to respond to those things he said in there, Bwala. But before I go in there, I'm going to play I'm going to just play just some few minutes, other 1 or 2 minute video of that particular interview. And if you guys want to watch it, you guys can go to go to the particular page and then watch that full interview. But I'm going to play the snip of that interview for you guys to just listen for a few minutes, and then I will come back and then give you guys my full critique on the things he said in that interview. There are quite interesting things that he said that I feel that deserves my response to those things. These are all part of nation building. When people say certain things that are not true or contradicting, we all have the right to critique them and then ask them some certain questions. So I have some things to ask Bwala and some certain things to remind about Bwala that you guys feel that is going to be worthy of interest for you guys to have that information. So I want you guys to watch that particular interview just for a few minutes, and then I will return back and then give you guys my full response and debunking all what he has said in that particular interview. So watch the video.
We read that the president called the EFCC to order and directed them to unfreeze the account. The EFCC, as an independent agency, does the president have the constitutional power to give them instruction?
Section 5 of the Constitution says the executive powers of the Federation lies in the president.
Does this power also include INEC?
Yes.
I would assume that the president does not have the constitutional power to interpret what is lawful and unlawful. Is
Yes.
not?
Nobody in Nigeria has the power of interpretation except the court of law.
If he doesn't have that power, how do we agree that he can sit in his office and decide when these agencies are going contrary to what is lawful or not, to be able to give them that directive?
Because 1 + 1 is 2.
I need you to help me understand, because in July 2022, you quit APC over the Muslim ticket. By August, you were Atiku's spokesperson. By January 2024, we saw you in Aso Villa, pledging loyalty to this same man you spent a year calling illegitimate.
I never called it illegitimate. Nobody has called the president illegitimate. It is only Aisha, because she's ignorant.
You're denying that you did not call him illegitimate.
Yes, I never did. If you have it, pull it.
Because you said, in fact, you refused to call him president-elect on Arise TV. Instead, you called him president-select.
I tell you this true, and I lie not in the Holy Ghost.
Which primary school and which secondary school did he attend?
This list, I have no answer. Next question.
You think Nigerians do not deserve to know?
Go to a topic that is simple. I pull it the film.
November 2022, on your X account. The human brain,
My brother.
a miracle.
My brother.
It works and functions optically 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yes.
Until you join the APC, then it stops working. 14 months later, you join the APC.
Yes.
Is
I
your
think your
brain-
nickname will
your
bring me.
Is your brain still working?
All right, friends, I'm here now to give you guys my response. I believe you guys watched that clip of the interview that Bwala gave with that guy. So I'm here now to respond to some of the issues or some of the claims he made in that particular interview. So the Bwala's interview was an eye-catching, confrontational interview with that guy. And he said a lot of things, and he avoided answering some questions. So, Daniel Bwala, when political convictions becomes a political convenience, that is what I see in that particular interview. There is something Nigerians should watch carefully in Daniel Bwala's latest interview. Go and look for that particular video and watch it. Not because he is a government spokesman, not because he supports President Bola Tinubu, and certainly not because he changed political allegiance. Okay? Politicians are allowed to change parties. People are allowed to change their minds. But when someone changes political positions dramatically, Nigerians are equally entitled to ask what changed? And that is the question Bwala's latest interview raises. Because Nigerians have not forgotten the Daniel Bwala of 2022 and 2023. All right? We have not forgotten. The files are there. The clips are there. We can all recall them and watch them and over again. My first question, who was Daniel Bwala before Tinubu? Who was he before Tinubu? Let's start with the record. Let's examine the record. In July 2022, Bwala left APC after Tinubu selected Kashim Shettima as his running mate. You guys remember that episode? Bwala publicly said that Muslim ticket conflicts with his convictions and argued that APC had chosen politics over national unity, inclusivity, tolerance, and diversity. That was contained in China's televisions. The archives are there. That wasn't a rumor. That wasn't an opposition blogger investigating or venting something else. He said it publicly. He subsequently became a spokesperson for Atiku Abubakar's 2023 presidential campaign. And in February 2023, Bwala was confidently telling Nigerians that the political optics and feedback from the electorate were favorable to Atiku and that everything was pointing towards an Atiku victory. That's what contained in Punch newspaper. And the election, was conducted. After the election, he continued functioning as an Atiku PDP spokesperson. Now, something happened. In June 2023, Bwala criticized Tinubu's Democracy Day address for failing to acknowledge Atiku and Peter Obi. And what was the argument? That their contributions to Nigerian democratic struggle deserves recognition. That was also contained in China's television. He even described Obi's 2023 performance as a significant third force phenomenon representing something Nigeria had not previously experienced, at that particular large scale. That was also contained in China's television. Then something remarkable happened. Something remarkably happened. The political journey changed. The political journey changed. All right? By January 2024, Bwala was meeting President Tinubu at the presidential villa and telling Nigerians it's time to support Tinubu. He described Tinubu as a father of the nation and pledged his support for the administrations. That was also contained in Channel television interview. When critics questioned the transformations, Bwala defended it. He said he had informed Atiku before and after meeting Tinubu. That's fine. He also said that if Tinubu offered him a position that would enable him to contribute to the administration, he would appreciate it. That was also contained in Chinese television. By July 2024, he publicly declared, "I am not a member of PDP anymore," and said he was very close to joining APC. It was also contained in China's television. Then in November 2024, what happened? President Tinubu appointed Daniel Bwala as special advisor on media and public communications, also contains in China televisions. Now Nigerians are watching the man who once criticized Tinubu defend Tinubu. What a confusion. That's politics. But here is where the opposition must make the argument carefully. And I'm saying this to all the opposition party, especially to Obi. This is where you must make your argument carefully. The issue isn't that Bwala changed sides. The issue is whether his present argument should be accepted without scrutiny, when his previous arguments were almost the exact opposite. And that is why this interview is so important for me to analyze. The interviewer asked Bwala about the transformation. The transcript opens with the challenge. Bwala had previously led the APC over the Muslim ticket, yet later became a prominent Tinubu defender and eventually a presidential spokesperson. The interviewer explicitly confronted him with that history. And Bwala's response is essentially, I never call him illegitimate. Fine. Then let's examine the substance. Let's examine the substance. Because Nigerians don't need symptomatic argument about whether he used the exact words illegitimate. The most important question is, what did he actually say about Tinubu before and after election? That is where credibility is tested. That is where credibility is tested. Bwala's current defense of Tinubu is bewildering. In the interview, Bwala argues forcefully that Tinubu administration has not failed Nigerians. He cites security operations, military capacity, counterterrorism, efforts, and Nigeria engagement with broader Sahel security crisis. Wow. With broader Sahel security crisis. What an answer. And to be fair, that is a legitimate argument to take. A government spokesman is supposed to defend his principle. There is something, okay, there are things the Tinubu administration can point to. Every government does it. They can point to certain things. And there are infrastructure projects, okay, there are fiscal reforms, there are attempts to increase the security capacity, there are economic indicators the government can cite. An opposition spokesman who pretends that, that nothing has happened under Tinubu will also lose credibility. Why do I say so? If any opposition spokesperson who pretends that nothing has happened under Tinubu will also lose credibility, no matter how bad things are under this administration, there must be one thing you can point that is also particularly good to that administration. So let's give Bwala that particular point. But here is where the argument falls apart. This is where the arguments fall apart. This is where I took interest to trash everything he said in that particular interview. Please follow me to this particular journey. And I want you to pay attention from here. A government cannot be judged by the number of things it has done. It must be judged by results. Nigeria is not an academic debate. Tell the unemployed graduate that GDP statistics have improved. Tell the family struggling with food prices that microeconomics reforms are working. Tell a displaced farmer that military operations have increased. Tell a parent whose children cannot afford school fees that the government has increased its capacity. Government performance ultimately comes down to, can Nigerians live better? That is a very legitimate question. Are Nigerians safer today? That's another legitimate question. Can families feed themselves? Can businesses survive? Can young people find productive work today? Can citizens trust public institutions? These are the tests. Bwala's America's also has security problems argument is weak. That was his response when he was asked a particular question. He said, but America also has security problems. That your argument is weak. One of the argument in the interview particularly deserves criticism. Bwala compares Nigeria's security problem with security incidents in the United States and essentially argues that the existence of attack does not mean the American government has failed. That analogy sounds sophisticated, but it is logically incomplete. The question isn't, does America have a crime? Of course it does. The question is, how effectively does the government protect its citizens relative to resources, institutions, circumstances available to it? You cannot tell Nigerians, okay? You cannot tell Nigerians America has insecurity too. That is a weak argument. and use that as a defense for insecurity in Nigeria is whitewashing. It's an insult to those that have paid the ultimate price. It's an insult for a mother looking for a place to get a food to eat. It's an insult for those who are in a refugee camp in their own country. America's existence of crime does not establish that Nigerian security strategy is working. The comparison has to evolve. The comparison has to what? Evolve. Capacity, scale, response, institution, accountability, and then outcomes. Otherwise, it is simply a whataboutism. What about it? Then we arrive at P2B. This is where Bwala becomes particularly revealing. When it comes to questioning anything pertaining to P2B, that is where Bwala becomes particularly revealing. But listen, friends, I have a message for him. The transcript shows him, okay, that is the guy that was interviewing him, shows him dismissing questions about P2B's educational history as distractions and said Nigerians should focus on the issues affecting their life. So when Obi was pointing to about inaccuracy in his qualifications, he was telling Nigerians, don't mind, nothing to look, nothing to see. That sounds reasonable, but not convincing. But there is a problem. If transparency and relevance are the standard must apply universally. All right. If Nigerians have legitimate questions about P2B's record, they should be answered. And P2B has been answering questions, not dodging them. If Nigerians have legitimate questions about Tinubu's record, they should also be answered. You cannot say, don't ask questions about my principal. Your principal is the president of Nigeria. Nigerians employed him and pay his salaries, while demanding that Nigerians accept every allegation against the opposition. So the Nigerians should accept when you accuse other opposition parties, they should accept it, but your principle, no. The most damaging moment for Bwala is this. The interviewer asked a simple question about Tinubu's primary and secondary educations. What did Bwala said? Bwala repeatedly refused to provide an answer. He says Nigerians are not interested. The interviewer respond, you think Nigerians do not deserve to know the school the president attend? Bwala respond that Nigerians are not interested in knowing which primary and secondary schools the president attended. That is an extraordinary position for a government spokesperson, because the correct response should be incredibly simple. Here are the records. If the records are available, publish them. If they are unavailable, explain why. If there's a litigation, explain the status. But telling citizens that they aren't interested is not an answer. It's an aberration. And here is the irony. Again, Bwala own's argument is that Nigerians should focus on relevant issues. He has become a lecturer, an advisor to the Nigerian citizens. I agree. Nigeria should focus on relevant issues. I agree. So let's focus on relevant issues, Bwala. Let's focus on that relevant issues, Bwala. You raise it up, let's focus on it. What are the government plans for insecurity? We're focusing on the issue. Give me an answer. Why is Nigerian borrowing, why revenue remains under pressure? Bwala, we're focusing on the issue. What happened to the purchasing power of Naira? We are focusing on the issue. So I need an answer. Nigerians need an answer. What is the government plan for electricity? We are still focusing on the issue, and I'm still waiting. Nigerians are still waiting. What is happening with unemployment? What is the debt trajectory? And what are the measurable outcomes of subsidy removal? Nigerians are interested in these particular questions. We are discussing issues. Where are the promised benefits? And what is happening with the corruptions? What is the government plan for institutional reform? Those are the questions Nigeria actually need to be answered, because we are focusing on relevant issues. And those are the questions, Bwala. And this is where Bwala's own history becomes important. I cannot analyze that particular video without telling you guys the history of Bwala. Remember, in 2023, Bwala was not merely an ordinary commentator. He was Atiku Abubakar's campaign spokesperson. At that time, he argued strongly for Atiku's candidacy against Tinubu. In November 2023, he still advocated for a formidable opposition and spoke as an Atiku spokesperson. It was stated in Punch newspaper. Now he is one of Tinubu's strongest public defender. Again, changing political allegiance is not a crime, but it creates a legitimate questions. What principle determines Bwala's political loyalty? Is it principle, policy, national interest, party ideology? Which is which? Personal conviction? Which is which? Or simply whoever currently occupies power? That is the question Bwala must answer, because we are still focusing on relevant issues. Okay? And there's another very important fact. Bwala himself has previously said something that should make Nigerians think. It should make Nigerians think. In 2023 interview, he explained that he has supported Tinubu at one point, Atiku at another, and essentially considered himself successful whichever of the two eventually won. He said, whether Atiku wins or Tinubu wins, Daniel Bwala is not a loser. That was contained in Punch newspaper. That statement is incredibly revealing, because politics should not be about I win whichever candidate wins. Politics should be about I stand for a principle, and if my candidate violates that principle, I will say so. We all have principles in life, and we must stand by our own principles. Okay? Otherwise, political advocacy becomes transactional rather than what an ideology. The opposition should not make the same mistake. This is my advice to the opposition. Do not make the same mistake. And this is where I would advise P2B, Atiku, or everyone or everybody who wants to hear me. Don't attack Bwala's character, attack his argument. Attack his arguments. That distinction matters. That distinction matters. Don't say Bwala is a traitor. No, say, here is what Bwala said in 2022, and then here is what he said in 2023. Then we're what in 2026. Here is what he is saying, particularly now. And ask Nigerians a simple question. What changed? What changed? Let the people, the public record, decide. That is much more powerful. That is much more powerful. Bwala cannot have it both ways. Bwala cannot have it both ways. If Bwala wants Nigerians to accept his present position as an independent intellectual judgment, then he must explain the evolutions of his thinking. If he says, I changed my mind because Tinubu changed, okay? If he say that, fine. What specifically changed? What specifically changed? If he says, I changed because I saw the government performances, fine. Okay, fine. Which policies change your mind? If he says, I changed because national interest demanded it, fine also. Excellent. All right. What national interest texts are you applying? Okay? If he says, I simply matured politically, fine also. Then wait for your answer. Wait for the question. Then tell Nigerians what you know, what I don't know how I'm going to put it for you guys to understand. Tell Nigerians what you now believe that you did not believe before. That would be intellectually respectable. But the government has a bigger problem than Bwala. The government has a bigger problem than Bwala. And this is the message I would deliver to Nigerians. Do not make Bwala the issue. Because if the government defense of its performance depends entirely on whether Nigerians believe one spokesman, Nigeria has a bigger problem. Government should be able to defend itself with what? Audited figures. Okay? Be able to defend yourself with audited figures. Okay? Documents, budgets, employment numbers, security statistics, infrastructure delivered, okay? Electricity generated, all right? Inflation data, all right? Inflation data, poverty reductions, all right? Poverty reductions, investment figures, okay? Investment figures and should I, and what, there's something that's escaping my memory. Investment figures, transparent procurement. Yes, transparent procurement. Now, evidence should be the spokesman. Okay? Evidence should be the spokesman. Now, here is the version I will actually use if I'm Peter Obi's spokesperson. All right? Chief Daniel Bwala, Nigerians are listening to you, but Nigerians also remember you. They remember the man who left the APC because of the Muslim ticket. They remember the man who argued that the ticket sacrificed, okay, inclusivity and normal, the national unity for political calculations. They remember the man who becomes Atiku Abubakar's campaign spokesman and also passionately argued that Atiku was the better choice for Nigerians. They remember the man who criticized Tinubu for failing to acknowledge Atiku and Peter Obi's in his Democracy Day address. And Nigerians now sees the same man defending President Tinubu, okay, as though criticism of yesterday never happened. You are entitled to change your mind. Nobody owns your conscience, but Nigerians are equally entitled to ask what change. If Tinubu change, tell Nigerians what change. If your principle change, tell Nigerians why. If your assessment change because the government performed better than you expected, show us the evidence. But don't insult Nigerians by pretending they cannot remember what you said yesterday. You tell Nigerians to stop asking questions about the president's educational record because they supposedly aren't interested. Who gave you the authority to decide what Nigerians are interested in? Okay? If there is nothing to hide, answer the simple question. Transparency does not require anger. Truth does not require intimidations. Answer the simple question. And when you dismiss Peter Obi's question as social media content, remember that millions of Nigerians are not on social media because they are unserious. They are on social media because traditional political institutions have changed the model. Okay? Because those traditional institutions have also failed to give them the required answer they deserve. You say Nigerians should focus in their future. We all agree that is precisely why Nigerians are asking about the present government. They want food they can afford, they want security, they want jobs, they want electricity, they want functioning hospitals. They want a currency that does not destroy their own savings. They want government that does not borrow endlessly while telling the Nigerians the economy is improving or sacrifice, and then while the elite are living lavishly. And no amount of sophisticated political language can substitute all for those results. You cannot use America as an excuse for Nigerian insecurity. America have crime does not absolve Nigeria of own responsibility to protect Nigerians. You don't expect Americans to come and protect Nigerians. We elected a leader, and the first responsibility of a leader is to guarantee security to the citizens. You cannot say the government has succeeded simply because the government has done some things. Every government does things. The question is whether those things have materially improved the lives of Nigerians. And finally, Daniel, this isn't personal. You are entitled to support President Tinubu. You are entitled to defend him. You are entitled to change your own political allegiance, but do not insult the intelligence of Nigerian citizens. Okay? But political credibility is earned by consistency, evidence, and principles, and you lack those things. Yesterday, you were telling Nigerians why Tinubu politics was wrong. Today, you are telling Nigerians why Tinubu is right. Who is who? Are you Daniel Bwala or are you Bwala Daniel? So don't ask Nigerians to forget yesterday. Explain it. Because Nigerians have suffered. Nigerians have endured enough from politicians who change their principles when power changed hands. What Nigerians need now are leaders whose principles survive both victory and defeat. Here is my final message to Nigerians. Here is my final message to Nigerians. I will end this broadcast with this. I will end this criticism with this. Don't hate Bwala. Don't worship Bwala. Don't even make Bwala the story. Make accountability the story. If Tinubu is doing well, show us the evidence. If Tinubu is failing, show us the evidence. If P2B is wrong, what? Challenge Obi with evidence. If Atiku is wrong, challenge Atiku with evidence. If Bwala has changed his mind, okay, explain why. Nigeria does not need a political disciples. We don't need political disciples. Nigeria needs citizens who remembers, okay, who remembers yesterday's sufferings and today's acknowledgement. Nigeria needs citizens who remember, because democracy becomes dangerous when politicians discover that Nigerians have short memories. That days have gone. The question is not whether Daniel Bwala has the right to change his mind. He does. He can change his mind. Okay. The question is whether Nigerians have the right to question the credibility of new positions. They absolutely do. And that is the strongest argument an opposition spokesperson can make without descending into personal abuse or propaganda. Friends, that is the strongest argument P2B or any other opposition party can make without descending into personal abuse or propaganda. At this juncture, I raise my case.